Unpacking God Message 111, where we dive deep into the stories that have shaped faith, history, and the human experience. Today, we're embarking on an epic exploration of Genesis Chapter 7, the story of the Great Flood, a narrative of divine judgment, unwavering obedience, and the hope of renewal. In this first episode, we're focusing on the opening verses, Genesis 7 verses 1 to 10, where God calls Noah to enter the ark, the animals arrive, and the stage is set for a world-altering event. This is a story that's captivated hearts for millennia, and we're going to unpack it layer by layer. So settle in, grab a notebook if you'd like, and let's journey back to a time when one man's faith changed everything. Imagine a world steeped in darkness. Genesis chapter 6 tells us that humanity has fallen into chaos, violence, corruption, and wickedness fill the earth, grieving the heart of God. The Creator, who formed the world in beauty, looks upon his creation and sees a people who have turned away from him. But one man stands apart, Noah. The Bible calls him righteous, blameless among his generation, a man who walked with God. In Genesis 7 verse 1, we hear God's voice, clear and commanding, from the King James Version. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. These words are monumental. They're not just an invitation, they're a divine summons, a call to salvation for Noah and his family in a world about to face judgment. Let's pause to picture Noah's reality. He spent decades, some traditions suggest up to 120 years, building this ark. According to Genesis 6, it's 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Using a standard cubit of about 18 inches, that's roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall. Longer than a football field, and as tall as a 4-story building. This isn't a small boat, it's a floating fortress, designed to carry life through a cataclysm. Noah's been hammering, sawing, and pitching this vessel, likely under the skeptical eyes of his neighbors. Can you imagine the whispers? The mockery? Noah's building a boat in the middle of dry land. Yet, Noah persists, driven by faith. And now God's command comes. Come into the ark. It's time. Who is this household God calls? Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. 8 people chosen to survive what's coming. The Bible doesn't give us their names, but their presence is vital. They're not just passengers, they're partners in this divine mission. We don't know if they questioned Noah or hesitated, but they're here, ready to step into the ark. This family unit reminds us that faith is often communal, a shared journey. God doesn't just call Noah, he calls his entire household, showing his care for families, for relationships, for community. God's instructions get specific in verses 2 and 3. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. This is fascinating. Why 7 pairs of clean animals and birds, but only 1 pair of unclean animals? In later biblical law, clean animals like cattle, sheep, or goats are suitable for food or offerings. Unclean animals like pigs or camels aren't. By taking 7 pairs of clean animals and birds, Noah ensures enough for survival and possibly for sacrifices after the flood, as we'll see in Genesis 8. Birds, too, get special attention, perhaps because they'll later scout for dry land. God's plan is meticulous, thinking beyond the flood to the restoration of life. Now picture this scene. It's almost cinematic. Animals of every kind begin arriving at the ark. Lions with their golden manes, elephants lumbering forward, doves fluttering above, even creeping things like snakes or beetles. Genesis doesn't say Noah went out to gather them. It implies God brings them. This is a divine orchestration, a miracle of provision. Imagine Noah and his family watching in awe as creation converges on their doorstep. The text says they come 2 and 2, male and female, to preserve their kinds. The ark becomes a floating sanctuary, a microcosm of the world God created. Let's think about the logistics for a moment. The ark is massive, but housing thousands of creatures is no small feat. How does Noah manage? The Bible is silent on the details, but we can imagine wooden stalls, food stores, and careful planning. Some scholars estimate the ark could hold tens of thousands of animals, especially if young or smaller species were chosen. Others suggest the story emphasizes God's provision over practical details. Either way, Noah's role is clear: obey. He doesn't question how it's possible, he acts. Genesis 7 verse 5 sums it up beautifully. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. That's the heartbeat of this story, obedience in the face of an overwhelming task. God gives Noah a deadline in verse 4. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. 7 days. The number 7 is significant in Scripture. Think of the 7 days of creation, the Sabbath rest. Here, it's a countdown to judgment, but also to salvation. Noah has 1 week to prepare the ark, his family, and the animals. The rain is coming, a flood that will wipe away the corruption of the world and pave the way for a new beginning. Let's zoom in on this moment. Noah's family is working together, carrying out God's instructions. The world around them continues as usual. Jesus later reflects on this in Matthew 24, saying people were eating, drinking, and marrying until the flood came. They were unaware, caught up in daily life, blind to the judgment on the horizon. Noah's obedience stands in stark contrast. He's not swayed by the world's indifference. He trusts God's word, even when it means building an ark in a world that's never seen rain, according to some interpretations of Genesis 2. This preparation phase is rich with meaning. Let's explore it further. Noah's righteousness isn't just about personal piety, it's about action. The Hebrew word for righteous, tzaddik, implies living justly, in alignment with God's will. Noah's faith is practical. He builds, he prepares, he obeys. Compare this to other biblical figures. Abraham trusted God's promise of a son, despite his old age. Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, despite Pharaoh's army. Noah's faith is simple. He acts on God's command, even when the task seems impossible. This raises a question for us. What does it mean to be righteous today? To trust God when the world doubts? To understand Noah's world, let's step into the ancient Near East, roughly 3000 to 2000 BC. The setting of Genesis is often linked to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where cities like Uar and Sumer thrived along rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates. Floods were common here, as rivers overflowed their banks. Some scholars suggest Genesis 7 reflects a memory of a catastrophic regional flood, passed down through oral traditions. Others see it as a global event, the divine reset of creation. Either way, Noah's story is rooted in a culture familiar with water's power, both life-giving and destructive. Some Jewish and Christian traditions suggest Noah wasn't just building the ark, he was warning others. The New Testament, in 2 Peter 2 verse 5, calls Noah a preacher of righteousness. Imagine him calling out to his neighbors, "Turn back to God, the flood is coming." Yet, the world ignores him. This idea of warning ties to the flood's purpose, God's judgment on sin. Genesis 6 verse 5 says the wickedness of man was great, their thoughts continually evil. Noah's righteousness stands out, a beacon in a dark world. As the 7 days tick by, the animals keep coming. Genesis 7 verses 8 to 9 says, "Of clean beasts, and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah." This repetition emphasizes God's plan. Every kind of creature is preserved. The ark isn't just for humans, it's for all creation. God's care extends to the sparrow, the lion, the serpent. This reflects the biblical view of creation as good, worth saving. Let's consider the family again. Noah's wife, sons, and daughters-in-law are unsung heroes. They're hauling supplies, guiding animals, and preparing for an uncertain future. Their unity is a model of faith in action. In our lives, faith often involves others, family, friends, community. Noah's household shows us that God's call extends beyond the individual to those around us. How do we support each other in following God's path? By Genesis 7 verse 10, the preparation is complete. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. The ark is ready, the animals are aboard, and Noah's family is inside. The world outside is about to change forever. This moment is a turning point, not just for Noah, but for all creation. The flood is coming, and with it, both judgment and hope. Genesis 7 verses 1 to 10 sets the stage for an epic drama. Noah's obedience, the animals' arrival, and God's precise instructions point to a larger story. God's plan to preserve life amidst judgment. This passage challenges us to reflect. What does it mean to obey when the task seems impossible? To trust God when the world scoffs. Noah's story isn't just ancient history, it's a call to faith in our own lives. That's all for part 1 of the Great Flood. We've seen Noah answer God's call and prepare the ark. In part 2, we'll witness the flood unleash and explore its lasting impact. What strikes you about Noah's faith or the animal's arrival? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join us for the flood's dramatic climax. Until next time, keep exploring the stories that shape our world. Let's dive deeper into the concept of righteousness. In Hebrew culture, being tzaddik meant more than moral perfection. It meant living in covenant with God. Noah's righteousness is shown through his actions, building the ark, following God's exact instructions, trusting in the unseen. Compare this to Abraham, who in Genesis 15 is called righteous because he believed God's promise. Both men show faith through action, not just belief. In our lives, righteousness might look like integrity, compassion, or standing firm in faith despite pressure. Noah's example asks us, how do we live out our faith in practical ways? Consider today's world. We face our own challenges, division, uncertainty, crises. Noah's story encourages us to build our own ark, a life rooted in faith, prepared for whatever comes. Maybe it's standing up for what's right, supporting our community, or trusting God in tough times. Noah's obedience wasn't easy, but it was purposeful. What's your ark? The thing God's calling you to build. To enrich our understanding, let's explore the ancient Near Eastern context further. Mesopotamia, where many scholars place the Genesis stories, was a land of rivers and floods. The Tigris and Euphrates could be life-giving or destructive. Archaeological evidence, like flood layers in ancient cities such as Uar, suggests a major flood event around 2900 BCE. Some see this as the basis for Noah's story, while others view the biblical flood as global, a unique act of God. Either way, the story resonates with a culture familiar with water's power. Noah's Ark, built far from any sea, would have seemed absurd, yet it was exactly what God required. Noah's family deserves more attention. The Bible is sparse on details, but their role is crucial. Imagine the conversations. Did Noah's sons ever doubt? Did his wife question the years spent building? Their unity reflects a shared commitment to God's call. In Jewish tradition, Noah's wife was sometimes called Naamah, though the Bible doesn't confirm this. Their anonymity invites us to see ourselves in them, ordinary people answering an extraordinary call. Families today can draw strength from this, working together in faith. The animal's arrival is a reminder of God's care for all creation. Genesis 1 describes God creating animals and calling them good. Here, he ensures their survival. This has implications for us, caring for the environment, protecting species, stewarding the earth. Noah's role as caretaker of the animals mirrors our responsibility to God's creation. How do we honor that today? Noah's preparation wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. He built, organized, and trusted. This balance of faith and action is a model for us. Whether it's preparing for a personal challenge or a global crisis, Noah shows us that faith involves doing, stepping out, even when the outcome is unclear. His story asks, what practical steps is God calling you to take? The 7-day deadline adds urgency. Noah had 1 week to finalize everything. In our lives, we face deadlines, moments when we must act or trust. Noah's readiness challenges us to prepare our hearts and lives for God's purposes. As the countdown ends, the stage is set for the flood, a story we'll explore in part 2. Genesis 7 verses 1 to 10 is a story of preparation, faith, and divine provision. Noah's obedience, his family's unity, and the animal's arrival point to God's plan to preserve life. As we close, reflect. What does Noah's example teach you about trusting God? How can you prepare for the floods in your life? We'll carry these questions into part 2, where the waters rise. That's part 1 of the Great Flood. Share your thoughts on Noah's faith in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for part 2, where the flood begins. Thank you for joining us on this journey.